This week on Carlie's Couch, we talk about the importance of being rather than doing.
Welcome to Carlie's Couch. This is Lextopia here.
And Cece Fierce. Even though I might be changing that soon, but here we are.
Which one is CC Fierce?
Instagram.
So what are you going to change it to? Carlie Carpio?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's available?
Yeah. I have it saved.
All you got to, well, and then you don't have to lose anything. All you got to do is just change your username, right?
Yeah.
CC Fierce is kind of cool, though. I like when, so there's benefits to both. I like when people have like a cute thing that's their username, but also in the whole scheme of things, it's like having your name is always very beneficial as well for people to just find you and stuff.
Yeah. I haven't made the jump, but I saved my name a long time ago. One of my mentors back in the day told me that. So I always tried to go reserve all those things. I went and bought the domains. Like I did all this stuff because she was like, you don't want Carlie Carpio, like she says stripper, but back then like OnlyFans, you know what I'm saying? It's not me. Not me. If y'all ever see that, it ain't me, y'all.
I mean, it don't matter though, because like
maybe
let the other Carlie Carpio make her bread.
You know, I'm not mad.
But you have a few other ones too, so
exactly. I'm trying to figure out how to work all that together.
It works. Well, CC Fierce for now,
yes.
Or Carlie Carpio on Twitter. Yeah, that's the thing that makes it dumb when it's like I gotta be like it's on this and on this and on this and on this. Carlie Carpio on Cash App.
Go ahead and send me some.
Right. Basically, because the way they tried to recommend that I send something when I went into the app was very disrespectful. We hope you all are doing well. We have enjoyed looking at the comments and thoughts from the last few episodes that we've done. We've talked about life being fair. We talked about struggling. And I feel like I really enjoyed those conversations because we are kind of like exploring and reassessing how like the things that we've thought are grown up with or kind of mindsets and just what can be a little different. Or really, I like the idea of evaluating like, okay, does this thing, the way I've always looked at it, does that serve me now? So those have been really interesting, I think, for sure, recently.
Yeah, I was actually in a training, and something you said just made me think about it yesterday because we're getting ready to do our summer camp that Charlie Kemp was talking about. If you haven't listened to her episode about revolutionizing education, it's 238. Go ahead and find that. It's great and a lot of data. But we did this thing called cultural bingo. And it's like a way to get to know people. And we were doing it as a board for the nonprofit, but it's something that we actually do with our kids to help them like connect with each other on a deeper level than just like whose favorite color is blue. And so anyways, we did it as a group and it was like, okay, think about yourself as like back when you were a child and then answer all these questions. And some of them were like, you know, how did you deal with conflict? Was crying okay in your house? What are some cultural meals? Like, how do you
getting deep with the
how
kids.
do you address, you know, adults in your life? Were you allowed to talk back? You know, what is anger? What is expressing anger look like in your household? Like different things. And it was so cool to see like, even though we're all so different, we're all so similar. And then some things you're actually not. Like I was very unique on a couple of my answers. Like I couldn't find nobody on my little bingo card, but it was kind of cool because it was like, oh man, those are the things that like make me unique. But to your point, you know, this is me as a child. Like, do I still believe those things? Are those things still affecting my life in that certain way? And do they still serve me?
So the purpose of the exercise was I'm answering the questions and then looking for somebody who had similar ones to put their name on it.
Yeah. So, but
that's
you answer
cool.
as your child self. So like you back in the day, and it was like, you know, what religion did you grow up as and different stuff. And then, yeah, you're walking around and it's like, okay, well, how do you address conflicts? And me and one of the girls were like directly bet, like put that down there and like different stuff. So it's like, oh, cool. You kind of see like where you connect with people outside of like the lines.
I think what's cool about that too is the fact that if you have to think about it from the lens of your inner child, now you're starting to think about how things are different, because I would like that example you just used about conflict would be totally different than now. But then also to have to reflect back to your childhood experience in some of those ways and how you dealt with it and how you moved through it informs you of like how, you know, why, how you are. So that is kind of an interesting exercise, even probably for a person in general. Not even as about the connecting with other people, but learning more about yourself too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it looks just, it's so cool looking back and seeing so much growth. Like even within the last couple of years, you and I were talking about earlier, like through the podcast, we've grown so much that Jay recommended, he was like, I think y'all should revisit some topics. 'Cause I feel like both of y'all are way past some of the places where you were when you first talked about it.
Right. We could be like, listen to this clip from 2019. Carlie, you had said this.
Oh man, yeah.
Or sometimes when you go back and listen to stuff, you be like, damn, I'm on the same thing still. So I don't know about that. But that being said, though, we're glad that you guys have liked those episodes as well. And we're going to look at a couple of responses we got from the Life Isn't Fair episode. Because, Carlie, what was the question that you put up about it?
Should life be fair? And what does fair even mean? And so I thought it was interesting because those were some of the clips that I posted. Because I thought that they were so poignant for what we were talking about. Like, what the hell does that even mean? And we got some pretty interesting responses.
Yeah, so Ashley said, life is as fair as I make it for myself. I'm trying to think around, like, what does that really mean? And then she said, do the things to make it fair for me. So I'm assuming she's saying, like, I do the things that make it fair for me and for those around me. It sounds to me like she's just saying, like, if I try to treat people a certain way and hope that that's how I'm treated.
I took it as like the first part is life is as fair as I make it for myself, like her agency of perception and like what things happen. So she, like how she perceives, like her actions and all the things she can control. So her actions, like, so your point, like how she treats people, what she does, the work she puts out, like how she gives back to the community, etc. But then also like, how she perceives those things too.
But the only thing that I would challenge about that is life is as fair as I make it for myself. I don't know if you control that. And even if you can control your perspective on, well, you know, like I feel like that's just like constantly putting judgment on, is this thing fair or not fair? If you look at it that way, life is as fair as I make it for myself. Earl said, or Nan Earl said, not sure if anything should be anything. Fair parallels objectivity, and that doesn't exist for real. And I like her response because I'm on the like nothing matters boat, or like everything is whatever type boat. And so I think about, that's kind of what we talked about. It's like, well, it's not about should necessarily, like you're not trying to make it fair. It's just, it is what it is. But like, that's not really something to have to think about. And it kind of sounds like that's what she's saying, where it's like, oh, that doesn't really even exist for real. So
yeah, and that was the one when I reposted her response that got the most like people liking it and being like, yup.
Yeah, so it's like, and I think what we talked about was like, well, don't necessarily waste time trying to make it anything.
And then Tavares said, yes, meaning that everyone should treat others with how they want to be treated, kindness, respect, and understanding.
Yes, so what? Should life be fair?
Yes.
Should life be fair? Yes. Sure. And so to your point, if you ask, should it be fair? So he focused, it sound like, on, he focused on the good. But he said, yes, it should be fair. But he didn't say, yes, it should be fair, meaning that if I treat somebody bad, I should get treated bad, or, which maybe he believes that, I don't know. Or if somebody treats you bad, they should be treated bad. He might mean that too, like eye for eye type thing. But the way he said it, it sounds like he's saying life should be fair. So thinking about that, if I believe that life is fair, then I'm going into the world treating people the way I hope to be treated, which that makes sense, that sentiment.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good too when I kind of dove into it. 'Cause at first I was like, I mean, that's not, but also here's the thing, like if it is fair and people treat others how they want to be treated, not everybody necessarily wants to be treated with kindness and respect and understanding. So,
or not even that, but like, not even that they want to, but not everybody will. Like, I'm not always gonna, be on point, or, you know what I mean? Like, and so that almost, let me not get into that. I was about to say, it sounds kind of like how Christianity, where it's like, well, if you mistreat somebody, like, should something happen to you? And then that's kind of setting yourself up to be like, okay, I should live like this, or I should make sure I do these things. But at the end of the day, you're also not in control of that. Like, so sure, it's good to look at people and treat them the way you want to be treated. And yet that's not happening. Like, so maybe you think it should. So that's the question you did ask. Should it be fair? But that's not how it works. And so that can't be your motivation for doing that.
I was about to say, yeah, that kind of, yeah. And then Keyshawn hit us with some just questions. Like, she just really liked the topic and thought it was interesting. The same kind of way we did. Like, what is fairness in general? What is unfair about life itself? Is it the circumstances? But then she said life itself is a gift in essence. It seems to be the circumstances that we create as human beings that are unfair.
Life is a gift, and it's the circumstances that we create that are unfair. I don't know if I disagree with that. It sounds like, or what I'm getting out of that is humankind, which I do agree, and not necessarily on the individual basis, but altogether, like, nobody in this world has to be hungry. Nobody
at all.
There's literally no reason for a lot of the things to be what they are, because we have plenty of resource. We have plenty. And yet, as a whole organism, we are where we at because that's what we all have chosen. We collectively are moving in this way to where that is what it is. So to that point, sure. I'm not mad at that thought.
Yeah. So thank y'all for all the insights.
Not mad at that. Yeah, and keep leaving comments, questions, thoughts with the episodes. We're glad that you do engage with those, because that allows us to kind of think about, just what are other ways that people think about things, which can be interesting and also offer additional perspective for us as well, I think, and for our listeners when we go through these types of comments from you.
Yeah, we learn from y'all too, so that's cool. It's just like more people in the conversation.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so today, Carlie, at the beginning, she said we're talking about doing versus being. And Carlie just came back from a trip. I'll let you actually kind of talk about it. But Carlie just was on an 8-day jamboree in Singapore. And so we had been talking about the trip, and I was looking at some pictures. It looked really cool. So for anybody who's been to Singapore, hopefully you liked it as much as it seemed like you liked it. And it looked like a lot of cool things that you did and enjoyed, and was able to do a lot of exploring. And so talk a little bit about that trip in the context of our episode today.
Yeah. So I had planned this kind of last minute to go visit my dad. We had planned it after my mom passed. He was like, oh, like, you should come visit me. And I'm like, yeah, that'd probably be great. Like, to get out.
That one guy, he was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. I was like, are you buying the ticket? Cause for sure. But, yeah, I was really excited about the trip, but I had already planned a couple things right before the trip. Like, I had a really heavy work week, and then my best friend came out here, and I took her to a concert like right before, and I just did, like, the way that my flights worked is like I was oh my God, I was overwhelmed and anxious because I had like 2 heavy weeks of work. Then my best friend was here, so I was with people, didn't have alone time for like 2 whole weeks, all the way up until she left Sunday. I flew out Monday. And so I ain't gonna hold y'all. I was mad, anxious, and overwhelmed. Like, my nerves felt frayed. Like, I just was like, oh my God, I'm burning the candle from both ends. And I'm staunchly against that. I really try as hard as I can to not do those things any longer. So when I got there, I'm like, I landed at 6 a.m, like, lost the whole day, and I'm exhausted, but I'm like, I'm here. I'm trying to have a good time. But I was still just had all this lingering anxiety, like, of like everything that happened before. I just hadn't had time to process, and I just felt completely overwhelmed, like sensory overload, all kinds of stuff. So kind of in bad shape when I got there, to be honest. I ain't gonna hold y'all. That 16-hour plane ride did not help.
Yeah, it's not cute.
Did not help. But I haven't ever really spent time with my dad like this, so I really wanted to be present. And also, like, I'm in Singapore, I'm about to enjoy this. I had a whole list of adventures I'm trying to go on, and I was trying to be so intentional about just being in the moment. And I noticed the first day, like, we went and got food from like a local food center, and went and got foot massages and relaxing, because that's a huge thing in Asian culture. It was great. But then I passed out like around 5 p.m. and I was done. Did not wake up until the next morning. But we did have a whole day of adventure before then. But then the next morning I woke up and I was like, still feeling anxious and like, oh, I got to do all this stuff on my list and all this. And I was like, actually, you don't have to do a damn thing. See, like, you are not working. Everybody knows you're going to be gone for a couple weeks. You did all the work before you left, at least most of it. Like, why don't you just take some time to just be and be present and allow whatever that is. And I feel like the moment I made the decision to just like be and let the day flow and stop trying to be controlled by like, oh, I have to do all these things. And oh my God, this. Like, the moment I chose to stop stressing myself out, like, I enjoyed my trip so much better. It was almost like I pressed a button, and then all the anxiety and overwhelm just kind of like flooded out of my body. And I was able to be a lot more present and just enjoy the space a lot more.
So your initial anxiety that you were having, because I can imagine too, like between you saying like you had 2 busy weeks knowing you had to get ready to go somewhere, are you saying like it would have been nice to just like feel like you could take your time and getting ready, you could be decompressed well before you like go, you have the time to like not feel like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things, so much going on at once. But that's also sounds normal. Like when during times when we feel like there's so much going on, in that moment, is there something you can do differently to make it feel like you are just being and in the present? Or is that okay? And then it's like once you got there, then you just have to be like, all right, let me just woo-saw it. But at that time, now you don't have that many things going on anymore. So it was kind of carried over. But I think that that's just valid during that time before to just feel overwhelmed because you had a lot of things going on. So with what you said about, okay, so let me just remind myself just be in the present and just chill and enjoy. Would that be applicable for like the week or two before? And in what way? Because maybe it can, but like in what way, if you were going back, could you have redone the time before you left?
Man, yes. And so I think that's the bigger piece. Like it's easy to relax when you're on vacation and in a different country and don't have stuff to do, you know, like of course, but it's like a mindset shift. And so the mindset I could have applied is like, remembering to stop and breathe, making sure I am obviously doing all of my self-care things like meditation, working out, all the stuff that like keeps my equilibrium normal. But I think in the moment, just reminding myself, like, you don't have to rush. Like this doesn't have to be a thing, and kind of relieving myself of the pressure of everything that is going on. So for example, yesterday we have summer camp coming up that I mentioned with Carlie, and I am redesigning the entire entrepreneurship curriculum. And we had a meeting and I was like anxious because we had a training in the morning, like a board meeting, and I taught at that, and that was great. But then I was like, damn, I got to come home and do this. And I just stopped. And I was like, nope, we're not doing that again. I'm not subscribing to that. Like, it's a blessing to be able to do these things. Like, how can I move in a way that doesn't put all this extra pressure and like rushing and anxious energy like into what I'm doing? Because anxiety and excitement like are both kind of similar energies. It kind of just depends on how you're looking at things. And so I was like, you know, what can I be excited about in this moment? Where can I give myself some grace? But I really stopped myself before I started freaking out. And I cranked out 5 lessons yesterday. And they were good, like quality, like shout out to me. But it was in that moment. And I was like, oh, wow, that's like some carryover from my trip. It was like every time I felt like the pressure, like, oh, I got to get everything done on my list before I leave Singapore because I'm already out here. It's like, girl, just relax and allow to like whatever happens is enough. And it just is. And allow yourself to be wherever you are.
So listening to you, the way you talk about it now, in my mind now, I'm reframing because I was actually kind of thinking about being versus doing a lot differently. Really, what it sounds like we're talking about is how to there's a word I need, like how to mitigate overwhelm, like that feeling of being overwhelmed. Okay. But didn't we do an episode on being overwhelmed?
We don't even remember.
Look,
I was about to say, look, it's been on our ideas list, but I'm not sure if we did maybe we did.
I feel like we did an episode on being overwhelmed, but that's what I'm hearing from you is like, okay, in times when there's a lot going on, or maybe not even just that, but like in general, how can we stay kind of in a space or keep ourselves in a space where we aren't like going through the to-do list and like, oh, this is coming, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. And be able to relax ourselves and like, no, it's okay. How can we not let like the future stress us, not let all the things today, like just take you kind of down that path? Because I felt very similar to that yesterday or the day before, where it's like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have an opportunity to fly out the next day for work, attend an event, do all the things. But I remember feeling so irritated. So let me actually put the time and days to it so it makes sense. It's Thursday night, and I'm like, hey, can you be somewhere on Saturday? Okay, cool. And the time was like, yeah, that sounds easy. But then Friday morning is like, all right, I got to think about my client sessions today on the Friday. I have to look for flights, and I'm trying to be conscious of their pockets. And I was like, let me look at flights that can make sense. Shoot, I got to try to be there by this time. Oh, today I was supposed to podcast, but I had a hair appointment at 4:30. But now the flight I need to do is 5:49. So now I got to change this. But what can I change with this? And how am I going to do this? And I want to prep for the actual work and the event. But when can I do that? And da-da-da-da, right? So, like, all of a sudden, especially now when things get kind of tossed around, it went from being like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I could be there on Saturday to like, oh, man, like, I got to figure out the right flight. And sometimes it gets hard to even think about, like, what should I focus on first? Or like, what is the thing right now that I can just act like everything else is whatever and just be like, what do I need to do? So I'm like doing all these back and forth. And then I'm like, I got to call Carlie like, oh, I can't podcast. Like, when can we do it? Da, 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 da. So it's like just so much stuff going on. I was getting phone calls from like my friends. I was being all irritated. Like, I hung up. They started talking to their mom on the side and I was like, click. So I was like, I don't got time for that right now. but that was rude. I apologize. Forgive me. But like, I just knew I was kind of irritated off of just like, it was too many like popcorn thoughts and things I was trying to figure out and do at the same time. And I can imagine like if you have people in your space, like if your friend was visiting you off top, it's like you kind of, it's not like you can just even sit down and be like, leave me alone for a while so I can figure out whatever's going on. Thinking about packing, thinking about going, want to look up stuff and da-da-da-da-da. All the things you have going on. It's just like you're in a whirlwind in those moments. And I'm trying to think of like, what did I even do at that time? Besides just be irritated. And I think it just wasn't until I got all the pieces settled, I got all the pieces in place, that I was like, okay. But then I didn't even have time to do that because it wasn't until I got to where I was going. Same thing you just said. It wasn't until I got to where I was going that I was like, I could choose to be chilling in the present now. Because even with that, like I left a hair appointment at like 3 something. I get home at 3:50. I have to leave by 4 to try to get to the airport by 5:30. My flight was like at 5:49, and I got to the gate at like 5:36. But I missed it. So they were like, yeah, this is closed. So I was like, okay, cool. But at that point, actually, that's when I got comfortable. I was like, oh, okay, cool, because I already know I had a 2-hour layover anyway, the next place. So I'm like, as long as I get to Vegas before 11, and it's 5:49 right now, as long as I get to Vegas for 11, and from LA, that's not crazy. I was like, I'll be fine. I'm sure they have another one. And I think they did because I'd been looking at flights a million times that day trying to figure it out. So he was like, yeah, I can put you on standby for the 8 o'clock. I was like, all right, cool. And I felt like, he was like, you're first on standby. I was like, I'll be fine. And then I just ended up having to waste the time in LA airport as opposed to like the layover I would have had in Vegas. So it all worked out fine. But it's like, all right, and then once I got to North Carolina, I was like, all of a sudden I was hyped. It was terrible. Like, I didn't sleep really on the flight and all that. But like, once I got there, I was hyped. I was ready to go. I landed like 6 a.m. too. I sat in the Charlotte airport on the little rocket chairs. I started doing a little work. So I was like, let me not pop up on my client like mad early. But then when I left the airport, got to them, we were like, okay, great. Let me clean my pits up. Let me get myself together. Let's go to this event. And it was fine. It was good. But it wasn't good till I got there.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with that, though, you think? Sometimes, if a lot of things are going on, sometimes you just have to go through it and, like, figure it out. I don't know. I probably could have did, like, a pause or something and just, like, let me woosah a minute while I try to figure out my day. But also, I don't know. It's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think in times that it's necessary, but I think that it has been, at least for me, I'll say so conditioned that it's kind of like more of a normal state. Like it happens a lot frequently, maybe when it shouldn't. And what I mean by when it shouldn't is like should is a stupid word anyways, but in the sense of like maybe what's going on, like me having to get those lessons done didn't warrant all of the anxiety and the like overwhelm and buildup that was happening. And so I was glad I was able to de-escalate and like be
What
present.
does that mean?
So
when you said it didn't warrant that?
So what my reaction, so if I stub my toe, right, and like a light stub, not like that corner of a metal bed, but just like maybe on the side of the couch or something, it's like, oh damn, it hurts. Not like, oh my God, my fucking day. And I start throwing stuff. Like what I'm saying is my body Is
that how you did?
Yeah, like my body was like overreacting. I could feel it like bubbling up, like it was gonna explode. And I was like, bro, like what's going on? So yes, I think sometimes it's necessary and great, but I think it's one of those things that like, you know, we've been so accustomed to becoming overwhelmed or having so much to deal with that we can kind of live in that constant state. And we talked a little bit about
sometimes that's why we procrastinate, because we feel comfortable in that weird stressed out space for whatever reason,
and not getting stuff done and being like, I'm really good under pressure. So you build up all this pressure on yourself. And so
I'm scratching my neck because I got a lot of stuff I got to do today for tomorrow.
And I can't wait to talk about like your being versus doing, how we thought about it before, but like in this sense,
which is actually, it is going to be relevant for our next episode. So now I'm like, we can talk after this, because I already know.
Oh, perfect. But in this one, what I mean is like being present instead of being, I guess, overwhelmed for all the stuff you have to do. And I've only noticed it, like, funny enough, mostly on trips. Like the last trip I took was to Tulum, and that was fucking a long time ago. Like, I mean, like international trips.
Yeah, that was a minute.
Yeah, international. But I remember my focus there, because I went with my homegirl, is like being versus doing. I'm a doer. She's a more of a beer, like in the present moment. Like she like kind of floats around and does stuff, and I'm like, oh, I want to do this and this and this. And I noticed, and I was like, why do I feel all this anxiety about like getting things done and pressure, and we have to do stuff? And so on this trip, I was able to really just be present and kind of hang out and enjoy the moment and not put that pressure on myself. Okay,
so and then in that instance, your use of being is like going with the flow, as opposed to feeling like I need a plan, I need to figure out this, I want to do this, how can we make this work?
Yeah.
Okay, so that I notice, do you feel like, let me ask you first, do you feel like you can fluctuate between sometimes you are one or the other?
Oh yeah.
But also, do you recognize that there's certain like areas or things, maybe like with travel, there's certain things where you gravitate towards like one or the other, kind of, because we see this too on like online, where people talk about when you go on trips, it's important to know like what kind of person, is
are we napping? Are you doing 85 things today?
Yeah, because some people want to have their day mapped out, some people are in between and flexible. I'm an in-betweener. So to that, I think that's interesting, right? Because in general, I'm definitely a doer. And I think a lot of people, probably a lot of like the listeners here, and I think we have a particular type of personality of trying to achieve through stuff. And like, you want to, for me, sometimes even having a plan is more important than even doing the plan, right? Like that's how messed up I am. Like I feel good when I'm like, all right, what are we doing? I can figure this out. I'm figuring it out. Let me figure it out. In these cases, I don't see space for a being, maybe a little more with you. For me, it was like I had a day to like get this stuff done. So it's not like, oh, how can I just go with the flow? Like, no, I had to actually plan.
Yeah.
I had to find a flight, and I had to move stuff around, and I had to figure it out. So in some cases, I feel like that's sometimes you need to do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. But to the example of you with your weeks before the trip, you probably in the scheme of things did have the time to be like, you know what, I don't have to stress so hard about a lot of these things to get done, and take the time to just be like, all right, right now I'm gonna focus on doing this, and try not to think about the bigger picture as much, because you had a little bit more time. But now when we talk about going on like a trip, or when you're somewhere and doing things, and maybe like even everyday life, being a doer versus or like having to need a plan or have the need to things to do, as opposed to just going through the day. I do not think that one is better than the other. And I think it's contextual, because if we're talking about work, you can go with the flow, but also if I have plans for how I need to organize my time, my day, what I want to get out of things, I'm much more likely, and we talk about this when we talk about goals and all kind of other things, much more likely to see things happen. Mm-hmm. And yet, and this will probably be a part of the conversation next time, so I'm not going to go into too much. And yet, when I am like more go with the flow with like even like a work week type thing, if it's not anything specific you got to do and all that, like I got to do for tomorrow, if I can go with the flow, sometimes you do need that. And sometimes it is like, I've had weeks very recently where I'm like, well, I don't have any meetings, especially if you don't have time stuff. I don't have any meetings. I don't have anything. It has to like get this to somebody. I might spend most of the morning chilling and watching TV, and then I'll do what I need to do. Or I am more just like, well, I know things that need to get done by the end of the week. And so when I feel like doing a thing, I'm going to do the thing. Mm-hmm. And those feel very refreshing as well, because I feel like, oh, in this type of mindset, space, time, whatever, of just like, let me go with the flow to get stuff done, I am doing what I want to do throughout the whole time, and I don't feel as stressed. But again, and yet now when those 2 weeks later, when you're like,
damn, I should have been using
not that, but it's like sometimes like you need to go hard, like especially with work stuff, like, okay, but I could have also got ahead if I did a little more work. Like I have my, outside of like client stuff, you have your own, building your own stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I could have had a little more time to write up some case studies or to do things. But if in the time I wasn't feeling it, I was like, I just kind of want to chill. And so I think that's okay to respect that and do that and just be in that case. And yet I don't, as long as you're not letting it like hold you back from actually going. And that's how I'm saying it kind of connects into what we're going to talk about next week. Because sometimes that can hold you back when you too go on the flow because you're still not really moving for real. And yet you feel better. And so which is more important, or which is, is it one bad or one good? I don't know. But I think that on trips and stuff like that, there's the time to, let me plan. Let me make sure I know that when I get to customs, I'm going to need this document and this, right? Like there's things you got to think about, things you need to do. Oh, let me Google and see what's a couple of things I want to try to do while I'm there. That doesn't mean you have to be like at 8 a.m. I'm doing this, 8:15 I'm doing this, 8:25 I'm doing this. But to have a few things, it's like, okay, now we can loosely make moves. And there's another part to this and I promise I'm going to let you talk. There's another part of this too of like, now when things get moved around and, something kind of happens, like, are you okay, like, going with the flow, right? So that's where I'm, like, a flexible in that, where it's like, I like to have a little bit of a plan, but whatever happens, it's whatever. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's funny because I was thinking about that because I definitely had a list of, like, 20 things that I wanted to do in Singapore, and I did all of them. The last day I had one pop up that I thought would be cool, and I was going to try to force it. Like, catch a train, can I catch my plane? Like, can I do it? And I was like, you know what? Let's not. Let's just enjoy where you are. If you don't make it back here, you were here. You did a lot of cool stuff. But I do think it is contextual. I don't think being or doing is better than one is better than the other, but I think you need a balance of them in your life. And maybe that's different for different people. Like maybe you are, like when you go on vacation, you want to be very structured, but in your day-to-day life, you're more flowy or whatever, and just like allowing yourself to be present. But for me, I think the kind of breakthrough moment was just recognizing not as much just like the being and then doing, but the pressure I was putting on myself for the doing. It was like a lot of anxiety and a lot of like real fiery, like kind of stressing me out energy about all of that extra stuff. And like, yes, sometimes life like warrants that, but in those moments, like, does it always have to be OD? Like, does it always have to be like every time stuff starts to get a little, do I have to be stressed out about it? Or is there a way I can like move about, and handle it without all the extra?
Yeah. Sometimes in your busiest like times, to stop and like actually not do that stuff sometimes that's beneficial. Again, on my example, not so much because you only got 10 hours to figure it out. But if we're looking at it outside of that, if we're looking at it like, our life and our week to week, I think that's why I like things like meditation and taking time to work out and all that stuff is very important, because you have to have time to be still in order to acknowledge that I don't have to be on 100 at all times. And instead of it feeling like, well, if I take a break now, then I'm going to have to go ham tomorrow. That could be true, but actually what I kind of find is that, and this might happen today, it's a real like 85% chance that if you just like, I just want to chill today, that the next day I'll be so refreshed sometimes that then I'll get that same work done in 30 minutes and it'd be clean and it'd be good. And so, but you have to have the discernment to know what is that and what's not, though. Because sometimes it's like, this needs to get done.
Yeah, don't play yourself.
Or sometimes, yes, a lot of times I'm playing myself. I could be playing myself sometimes, but sometimes not. And that also goes to show me that a lot of times it's just a matter of if I have something to do, I don't need to stress. It's like, let me look at my time and like, and know, instead of trying to schedule hard, let me look at this whole, like a longer period of time. Let me look at this whole week and think about what needs to get done this week. so that now when I feel like doing it, I could kind of do it. So you can have a loose plan as opposed to being like real tough. The more, for me, I find I like to plan, but the tighter I plan, like today I'm gonna do this, tomorrow I'm gonna do this, and as soon as it starts not happening, then it's like, nah, everything's getting off. And like I thought I was gonna do all this, I'm not doing all that. So it's kind of knowing yourself and thinking about where you can be flexible and where this needs to be done by this time. So it's kind of just assessing all of that.
Yeah. As I say, so 3 things that kind of brought up for me. So hopefully I remember all of them. So the first one is knowing how you feel and like when is go time and like when is like, oh, I could kind of like pull off the gas a little bit. So I was posting some of our older clips from our episodes onto YouTube Shorts and came across a clip from one of our like best performing episodes, Self-Care Isn't Everything. I think it was like 157 or something, but we were talking about emotional hygiene and the importance of checking in with yourself every day. So you kind of know like where you are, and then you're able to like do that. Like, well, today's the day where I actually need to chill.
Check in with yourself. Is this a day I can go hard?
Or is this a day I need to like just do the background stuff and clean and relax? Or is this like, no, you need to show up regardless because this is due tomorrow or whatever.
So let's use that as we wrap this episode up as a like, all right, now these are the things to think about in this case. And I like that. One is just literally assess how you feel. And sometimes you can think you're assessing how you feel for the whole week, and you can only think for today. But that is good because I guess essentially that is what I end up doing is I'm like, I'll look at all the things I need to do, and it's like, where am I at today? So like today, I have a lot of energy, and I'm like, okay, bet. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm working and I can get stuff done. I can go hard. And then there's some days where I already know, like, yeah, nah. And you can respect it when you look at it that way. Okay, so that's one good way to look at this being and doing.
Absolutely, checking in. Another thing that we've talked about is priorities. We had a whole episode on priorities, and really, like when you have a list of 20 priorities, none of them are priorities. Yeah, so really priority is only supposed to be one thing, but Warren Buffett said like make a list of 10 things, look at the top 3 most important, and then forget everything else. And so kind of looking at your week, like what are the non-negotiables that have to get done this week? What are the most important flaming hot things that we need to do? And then really making sure that those are done, and then everything else can kind of like flow around them.
And to that, I think that's important. I don't know if I would have to do that like on a daily or weekly, but to that point, and this is something that nobody would want to hear, but like also if you do that thing first, like it really helps, because I think a lot of the stress and pressure comes from, that top important thing is what you need to do. And that's where you get tired, because you be like, but let me check the email.
Let me wash the dishes.
I'd be like, man, I got to clean up the whole house first before I start. But low key, but sometimes that is like a bet. Now
sometimes that helps, but sometimes that's how your energy and you done.
That's also a signifier to me of how I know when my energy ain't right, because it was like last week I looked around and it was literally piles of stuff. And my room don't be dirty like that. It was piles of stuff everywhere. I've been on all these trips. Stuff was everywhere, all over the place. And I was like, I can't work. Like, and I also was like, I can't clean this right now. Like I mentally was like shut down. But then there was one day I woke up and it was like a Tuesday or something. So it was a work day. And I woke up and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take 2 hours and clean up. And I did everything I needed to do. And since then, my energy been up. So it's like when it finally came up and I was like, I got to handle this first. I got to handle this. But priority wise, yes. Like if you're looking at all this stuff, all you're doing is your mind is going up, down, this, that. But if you can pick something, be like, okay, bet, and get that done, or to your point, schedule at least to schedule those big things. You just really have to stick to it, because then otherwise you get down on yourself too. But
exactly.
That's good for prioritizing.
And then the last one that came to mind is the Pomodoro method that we've talked about so much. And it's
I started
less
doing that a lot more too.
Bro,
last week.
Oh my God, it saves me. And so it's like less outcome based, but it's like time based. So you set timers for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I'm gonna work on X. You're not saying I'm going to finish. You're saying I'm going to work on X. And then you take like a 5 or 10 minute break, and then you might do that again, or you might switch to something else. But that way, like I find when I do Pomodoro, I always get stuff done quicker, and I'm like focused and like just in. So yesterday when I was working on all those lesson plans, at first I was like, all right, it's gonna be 30 minutes for this one and 30 minutes. And I was like, girl, just set a timer and go. And I killed the first one in 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm good. And then worked on the second one, and then I took a break. And I came back in and finished it. And I like the idea and the freedom of not having like necessarily a hard deliverable, even though sometimes you do. But like when you don't need to, not having a hard deliverable, but allowing yourself the flexibility just to be completely like boss of the wall, tunnel vision, focused on one thing. And then you take a break and you step away, and then you can come back or do something else.
I really like that too. And that is so funny because all of these things, I'm like, yep, these are the things that I do. Because that's exactly what I got into last week. If I find myself being like, all right, I kind of have a lot to do. My main thing though is Pomodoro doesn't help me do things quickly. It just helps me get started. And then, because what happens for me is everything takes longer than I'll be hoping it takes. So I'm working on an outline, and the 30-minute timer goes off, and I'm like, well, I'm in the middle of a sentence. So either sometimes I'll keep going, and I'm like, okay, cool, because I just needed something to get me started. But it is helpful because it is easier to think about just time. Like, instead of thinking about the outcome, like you said, I can just think about, well, I just know I need to spend time on things. And in general, I tend to have to reframe my task in that way. It's like, let me not think about, okay, I want to put out this blog post on Friday and do this on this day and have this done on this day. Let me just think about, can I work on this for 20 minutes every day? Or when can I set time to work on the thing? And then it actually just gets done. So I think that's something we've talked about before, where it's like focus on the process more than the outcome. And it's a little bit less stressful. As long as like, hopefully like your outcome doesn't have like pure deliverable dates or whatever. And maybe it does, but also that's still helpful to be like, well, let me just work on it this day, this day, this day. And then it probably could be done by whenever.
But one step, like taking a couple steps a day is better than no steps. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed when there is so much, because I feel like there's always so much to do, so much you can do. Things like, I'm like, oh, I need to clean out my trunk. I want to clean out my closet. I need to do all this stuff. But then I get overwhelmed. Think
about all that, you're not doing all that.
But then I get overwhelmed. So it's like, okay, well, so this week my goal is to spend 30 minutes just cleaning out my closet, just getting rid of just 30 minutes, like this whole week, you know, because that's not something that has to be done, but it takes all that pressure off for me.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. Okay, I feel like we got some things to think about, and moving forward with how do you deal with like when there's so much going on, but then also like thinking about that for short-term stuff, longer-term vision of like how you move and operate. I would say also just pay attention to how you operate, because for some people, you know, having a lot of things to do is kind of what they need, or what they're used to. But I would, if you're that type of person, I would recommend practice or pretending for like a day if you can. That probably seems insane though for people who are super planners and stuff. But like, don't have a plan for a day. I go back and forth between needing a plan, not having a plan, and being somewhere in the middle. And for me, even just that variety is very helpful. And if you're the no plan, I don't got nothing, I just do whatever person, literally try to like plan out a day or a couple of days and see how like, maybe actually this is actually productive. Or maybe I get a little bit more done. Maybe I feel a little more stressed, less stressed, whatever. And I would challenge you to kind of think about that. And then using the tips that Carlie gave at the end, because those are really, really beneficial.
So hit us at Carlie's Couch this week and let us know, you know, if this was helpful, if you have your own tips whenever you start to feel overwhelmed, etc. And then the question of the week, Lexi, what is your favorite curse word?
I'm gonna have to go with bitch, I think. I like a little bitch. But not to call people that per se, but like for the emphasis, bitch, maybe.
Yeah, I think bitch is
or like this bitch. Da, 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 da. Like that. I think that would be my favorite.
I think bitch is a close second to fuck for me. I'm like, fuck. It's just kind of a...
Yeah, I use it, but I don't love it like that. Yeah. It's in a nicely placed bitch.
Yeah, like a little emphasis.
Yeah. Yeah, bitch, no, fucked up. Yeah. And then, of course, you use 20 of them at the same time. But, yeah, that's our favorite curse word to use, or just in general. Thank you for listening to this episode. Y'all heard us kept alluding to next week, so clearly we already know where we're about to go next. And so I suggest you follow along.
Have a good week.
Bye.